welcome to another chapter of the electric BMW 320i project. Yes, it's been a long time now, over 2 years since the last video, and a lot's happened in that time, like a worldwide pandemic. Well, that didn't stop me from working on my car, but it certainly didn't require me to drive anywhere with it, because didn't have to go into the office, but I still continued working on it and had a lot of different things happen over the last 2 years. This will just be the first video that will show some of those things, and you'll see that it was running really well after I replaced the DMOC with the Scott Drive inverter, which started out kind of rough, but found out it needed a new firmware update, but that was quickly solved, and then finally got it working right, and then it ran. It's been running really well. Problem was batteries started dying because they just were abused too many times, and so now I got a new set of batteries, but that will be in a later video. But for right now, let's take a look what was going on with this one. Well, there's the placement of the Scott Drive. Just a little bit wider than the DMOC, but that's not a problem. Plenty of clearance all the way around. Just a little bit shorter, so like I said, I might make a plate just to make it more finished. There's the water connection, so I'll have to reroute the water lines here back over there. All the other cable connections are in the front, plenty of length. And then here's the motor connections, and unfortunately it looks like I'm going to have to replace one of the cables for the Siemens. It's just not going to be long enough to go from here into, there's a panel in here where it gets connected. The other two are probably just long enough. Let's see, it's going to be able to make that bend. And then the battery cables, no problem. They've got plenty of length, both what they sent and what I have. So, like I said, the only big deal is going to be getting all the connections for this multi-pin connector, which is all the control signals for throttle and brake and other things. But what's really cool about this is that this has a built-in pre-charge circuit and main contactor. So like my whole contactor box down there with the battery cables in it is probably not going to be needed anymore, and have to probably either get those contacts closed permanently or put some jumpers across them, at least short term, so I can get this all working again. Well, I realized while I was waiting for getting the right crimp connectors, which was one of the things that was stopping this being finished, is that I had this other #1 cable, which would be good enough when I had the right crimp connectors for it. And I just made up these cables so that now I actually could test out the Scott Drive with the motor, with the Siemens motor. And unfortunately, it's not working. It does spin the motor, but it vibrates a lot, which means the phases aren't quite right. The 3 phases, that's what's here. That's in the software that's set up, and I don't know if the parameters that are in there are right for a Siemens motor, so I've been contacting Scott Drive and see if I could get the right parameters if that's the issue. But it moves but doesn't draw a lot of current, and it, like I said, it vibrates a lot. So still waiting to get the car going. Finally got the Scott Drive connected and turning the motor. Turned out it was a bad pin in the Siemens connector, but now at least it spins up smoothly. See, you can hear it. The only problem is it's actually turning in reverse. And the software for running it, if you try to reverse the direction, it just crashes. Now I think in these extra wires, there might be a way to do that. Reversing, I get to look at their manual and check it out, but at least it's turning and it's turning smoothly. That's a big difference. Yeah, that's what it should sound like. All right, ready to take it for a test drive. Got all the new wires out, just broke out to be able to manage them later, but that's just a test setup. I still have to finish the wiring, harness, and setup, but everything is ready to go, and it spins the motor. Well, that's good, as long as it turns in the right direction. I was having a little bit of a problem with that, but ready to go. This wasn't good. Had to take all the dash wiring apart because I accidentally shorted out my 12-volt system, and that was fine because a fuse protected everything in the EV side, but this wiring, which was to power the dash and various other things, had a short to ground of like 14 ohms, which, you know, would drive down the 12 volts, and what it turned out to be was that little panel switch on the dash has got a short in it, and that must have been from the current that flew through everything. The problem was caused by this braided copper that I put as a signal barrier to help protect the input signals into the Scott drive. Accidentally touched against the 12-volt point right here before it was covered with plastic, and that shorted out the whole 12-volt system. But again, like I said, there was a fuse in there, so that 40 amp fuse took care of everything, didn't bother anything in here or any of my other electronics on this side, and didn't bother the Scott drive. But like I said, it took apart, had to take everything apart, like the inertia switch and rollover switch. Everything had to come apart to figure out where that short was at, but it turned out to be that panel switch, and that's really bad because that switch was epoxied into the dash because of the way I had to cut the dash to get it to fit. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that now. But the car now finally turns on after fixing that wiring, and hopefully should be able to get it over and get it inspected sometime this week. Well, some more changes now since Scott Drive has been installed and working. Since it contains all of the necessary contactors and pre-charge resistor and everything else, I decided I removed my system, my old contactor box, which had one of those big contactors fused because the JevQ freaked out and had the wrong order, or didn't actually turn them all on at the same time, I think. But that won't happen now with the Scott drive, and rewiring my crossover box so I can take the output from the Scott drive, put that on an amp seal connector, and use it with the wiring box, and then have all the signals for the Scott drive be integrated, and then all this nicely cleaned up, look a lot neater installation. All right, finished the crossover wire box and got it mounted now. It's taking up less room. Decided to stay with the same box and use it and just paint it. And now this area is nice and clean. Last thing to do is maybe put some plastic around the 12-volt bus system, like there's plastic around the high voltage bus system. But other than that, everything is ready to go. just a little bit more wire management and should be ready to drive around again. Here's something I should have taken care of a while ago. This is the back seat, and what's really wild is that the padding for it is actually natural fiber, and that's alright, except it's been degrading and shedding particles on top of my battery boxes, which fortunately they're all sealed in plexiglass, but just kind of nasty. So looks like this will come apart pretty easily, and I'll just have the leather seat cover, and what I think I'm going to do is cut a piece of plywood that size and then get some kind of padding, like similar to this kind of padding, more synthetic, and use that as a seat cushion. But yeah, they really did a lot of natural fibers back then. Next step in the rear bench seat restoration, cutting out the foam upholstery. Pretty simple to do. Use one of these hot knives and just cuts right through the foam. Let's see how this goes. Now to see how it fits in the leather seat cover. Go. Looks like it fit in there pretty well. We'll go see how it sits in the back seat. One thing I might do is there's these wire wraps here that were used to basically go right through the other padding material and help hold it in place. I don't think I'm going to need that because this kind of fits in really well. This is what I was referring to. These were designed to have a wire go through them and come up through the foam, and they're basically stitched into the backing for the leather. But I think that I'm not going to need that. This foam's much stiffer than the stuff from 1983, so probably just be able to stick it in there and just put some lines across to hold it in place, but really that's going to be about it. Well, it really doesn't look too bad. Looks like an actual bench seat. The only issue is it sticks out 3 inches just because it can't go all the way back here either. There's a gap because the seat has got a curve to it. So the only way to change that would be to cut the foam that shape, and then with that metal bar in there I'd have to bend that too. But I don't know what else to do. This is going to be this way because the battery boxes are up above the deck of the previous seat by that much, 3 inches, so really nothing to do about it. But at least it still looks like a seat. And no more particles raining down on the batteries, which is the biggest and most important reason for doing this. Here's a look at the new wheels and tires. These great wheels that were obtained online. I'll show you that website. Really great looking wheels that are just kind of knockoffs of Alpina, but still look just as good. And then this new tires that fit these 15-inch wheels really look great and drive fantastic. One thing that was important about replacing wheels and tires like this is how it affects the speedometer. And what I was able to do is find this website, and I'm showing this capture from it, that by changing the sidewall height of the 15-inch wheel tire, that got the same circumference as the 13-inch wheel and tire combination. So the speedometer reads exactly the same as it did with the 13-inch tires. To use these nice big beautiful 15-inch wheels, because they didn't have the correct offset for the car to make it fit inside the wheel well, had to go with these spacer plates that go between the hub and the wheel. Unfortunately, the way these hubs were set up for this disc brake, there's this little ridge, see it right there, that is causing the inside diameter of this spacer to hang up right on that ridge. It's just not cut deep enough. So even though this looks like it goes right back on, get the right holes. It looks like it goes tight, but the disc brake is still loose. So gonna have to I'll probably take these other ones. Already tried machining them, but I just have to machine them a little bit deeper and get the right size to fit that ridge. These fit better, but this ring is not the right diameter for the wheel, so it doesn't fit either way. Big day for the 320, going to get the suspension work. Got a nice 40-mile drive on the interstate, so we'll see how this goes with the new tires and brakes. Hope it makes it there. Well, here's where all the magic occurred. Vintage Sports and Restoration, fantastic place. Wish I could show you inside, but it's just got a lot of nice cars, and they did this fabulous job on my car. See, got the stand is just perfect. Just a little bit of lowering on the front and on the back, and a nice, really nice setup on the suspension. So now I get to take the nice drive home and see how she goes. Alright, and made the trip from Vintage Sports. Drove really well. Handles so much better. Really feel the difference going around turns. Just no hesitation at all. Just tracks very nicely. The car sits so much nicer. Really looks great. Looks like it should be fast. It is fast. Here's what the coilover suspension looks like installed in the car. You can see that it's got actually that strut tube is much larger in diameter than the previous one, so, and then has an adjustable nut there that can change the right height of the car. Look really good. Here's another look at that where the coilover suspension connects to the steering knuckle. They actually had to take this out, and they cut this off here, and then the new one was welded back on, and that's how it's all put together.